The Hook, the Gala of Masks. The air in the Grand Ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was thick with the scent of expensive lilies and the underlying ozone of betrayal. I stood at the edge of the room, clutching a crystal glass of sparkling water, watching my wife, Elena, adjust her silk gown. She looked radiant, a diamond polished by my own hands and paid for by my own sweat. Tonight was supposed to be the celebration of 40 years of Stone and Associates. Instead, it was an execution. Elena walked toward the mahogany podium, the spotlight catching the $200,000 necklace I'd bought her for our last anniversary. She tapped the microphone. The room fell silent. 300 of the most powerful investors in the city leaned in. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady, cold. "But tonight isn't just about celebrating the past. It's about recognizing when the past is no longer relevant. Arthur Stone, my husband, has been the face of this firm for a long time. But age and mental decline have taken their toll. Tonight, I am announcing not only my filing for divorce but my support for Julian Vane as the new sole CEO. Arthur is stepping down. It's time for the relics to make way for the future." The room gasped. I looked at Julian. He was standing near the stage, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. He didn't look at me with pity. He looked at me like a landlord looks at a tenant he's just evicted. But as the murmurs grew, I felt a strange, cold calm. I reached into my tuxedo pocket and felt the cold plastic of a USB drive. Elena thought she was delivering a death blow. She didn't realize she had just walked into a room where I had already rigged the floor with explosives. "Enjoy the spotlight, Elena," I whispered to myself. "It's the last one you'll ever have." 2. Introduction. The Empire of Dust. My name is Arthur Stone. At 64 years old, I was supposed to be at the pinnacle of my career. I am an architect, not just of buildings, but of lives. I built a fortune of $40 million starting from a one-bedroom apartment with a drafting table made of a literal door propped up on milk crates. I spent 40 years thinking I was building a fortress for my family. I thought every late night at the office, every missed holiday, every grueling negotiation was a brick in a wall that would protect Elena and our future. I was wrong. I wasn't building a fortress. I was building a gilded cage, and the people I loved were just waiting for the key to turn so they could lock me outside of it. If you are watching this, you probably believe in loyalty. You probably believe that if you give someone the world, they won't try to take the stars from you too. I am here to tell you that greed has no ceiling. But I am also here to show you how to fight back when the people you trust most decide to treat your life like an asset to be liquidated. Stick with me. Because the way I dismantled Julian's greed and Elena's vanity wasn't through anger. It was through the same precision I used to design skyscrapers. I let them think they had won, because a person who thinks they've won is a person who stops looking at their feet, and that's exactly when they trip over the wire. 3. The accumulation of sacrifices. The long shadow. To understand the sting of the gala, you have to understand the 20 years that led up to it. When I met Elena, she was a struggling artist with a mountain of debt and a family that treated her like a disappointment. I didn't see a liability. I saw a woman I wanted to protect. I paid off her $150,000 in student loans within the first year of our marriage. When she wanted to open her first gallery, I didn't just write the check. I spent my weekends installing the lighting and the drywall myself to save her money. That gallery failed in 6 months because she refused to show up before noon. I didn't blame her. I opened a second one. Then a third. I told myself she was finding her muse. In reality, she was finding out how easy it was to spend money she didn't earn. Then there was Julian. I found him 10 years ago. He was brilliant, hungry, and polished. I took him under my wing. I gave him 30% of the firm because I wanted him to have skin in the game. I treated him like a son. When his father got sick, I paid for the private nursing. When he wanted a penthouse to impress clients, I signed the corporate guarantee. I thought I was creating a circle of trust. I was actually creating a circle of sharks. The first cracks the betrayal didn't happen all at once. It was a series of small, quiet thefts. It started with Elena, forgetting to tell me about dinner parties she was hosting with Julian while I was away on site visits in Dubai or London. It continued with Julian making minor adjustments to the ledgers that I was too busy to check. But the true mask fell 6 months ago. I was working on the Horizon project, a 60-story glass tower that was to be my magnum opus. The stress was immense. One afternoon, in the middle of a board meeting, the world turned gray. My chest felt like it was being crushed by a hydraulic press. I woke up in the intensive care unit 3 days later. I was weak, hooked up to tubes, drifting in and out of a morphine haze. One evening, I heard voices outside my room. The door was cracked open just an inch. The doctor says he might have permanent cognitive fatigue. It was Elena's voice. There was no sadness in it. It sounded like she was reading a grocery list. "That works in our favor," Julian replied. I could hear the clink of a coin, a nervous habit he had. "If we can get the board to sign off on a health and competency clause, we can trigger the buyout. He gets a fraction of the share's value because of the risk his health poses to the firm." "And the trusts?" Elena asked. "Once he's declared unfit, you as the spouse and I as the business proxy take over the management. We can liquidate the real estate holdings in Florida within a month. He'll be in a nice assisted living facility, Arthur will be comfortable, and we will be free." I lay there, my heart rate monitor spiking. The beep 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 was the only thing I could control. I wanted to scream, to jump out of bed and wrap my hands around Julian's neck. But I realized something. If I reacted then, I was a dying lion. If I waited, I could be the hunter. I closed my eyes and slowed my breathing. When the nurse came in 5 minutes later, I pretended to be asleep. But inside, I was already drawing the blueprints for their ruin. 4. The chess game. The architect's silence. I was discharged from the hospital 2 weeks later. I played the part of the broken man perfectly. I moved with a slight limp I didn't need. I forgot names in conversation. I let my hand shake when I held a pen. Elena was attentive, in the most clinical way possible. She brought me tea and told me to rest, while she went out to handle the gallery. I knew she was meeting Julian at a hotel downtown. I knew because I had already spent $50,000 of my private, personal savings, money I had kept in a legacy account from before our marriage, on a security firm that specialized in corporate espionage. The secret ally one evening, while Elena was out, her younger sister Clara knocked on my door. Clara and Elena were opposites. Clara was a pediatric nurse, blunt, hard-working, and perpetually annoyed by her sister's vanity. "Arthur," she said, sitting on the edge of my armchair. "I'm not supposed to tell you this, but I saw Elena's laptop open. She's been talking to a lawyer about involuntary conservatorship. They're going to move against you at the anniversary gala." I looked at Clara. "Why are you telling me this?" "She's your sister." "She's a vampire, Arthur," Clara said firmly. "You've been good to this family, and she's treating you like a broken appliance. It's disgusting." I realized then that I had one person I could trust. I asked Clara to do something for me. I needed someone to be the face of a new corporate entity, Stone Legacy Holdings. I needed someone whose name wouldn't trigger any alarms in Julian's background checks. The counter-strategy, the poison pill I called my own lawyer, a man named Marcus who had been with me since the milk crate desk days. We met in a greasy diner at 3 a.m. "Marcus," I said, sliding a folder across the table. "Julian thinks he's stealing a gold mine. I want you to help me turn it into a salt mine." We spent the next 4 months implementing a poison pill strategy. I discovered that Julian had been embezzling funds through a shell company called Vein Development. Instead of reporting him, I accidentally left a memo on my desk about a massive, secret offshore account, the Solis Fund, which I claimed held $15 million in untaxed profits from the Dubai project. It was a total lie. The Solis Fund was a honeypot. It was a digital trap designed by a cybersecurity expert. The moment Julian tried to transfer funds from that account to his own, it would trigger an automatic report to the SEC and the FBI. But I needed to make sure Elena was tied to it too. I started gifting her jewelry and properties, But I did it through the company's capital expense account, and I asked her to sign the authorization forms, telling her my hand was too shaky. She signed them without looking, thinking she was just stealing from me faster. In reality, she was signing confessions of embezzlement. The climax. The fall of the House of Stone. The night of the gala arrived. I let them have their moment. I stood there like a ghost while Elena humiliated me. I watched the respectable members of the board turn their heads away, embarrassed for me. When Elena finished her speech, claiming I was mentally declining, I didn't collapse. I didn't cry. I walked slowly to the stage. Julian tried to block my path. "Arthur, let's go sit down," he whispered, his hand gripping my arm too tight. "You're making a scene." "No, Julian," I said, my voice suddenly loud and clear. "I'm making a statement." I pulled my arm away with a strength that shocked him. I walked to the microphone. "My wife is right about one thing," I addressed the crowd. "Changes are coming. But she's wrong about the nature of those changes." 10 minutes ago, as Elena was speaking, a set of digital triggers was activated. "Julian, you might want to check your phone. You'll find that the Solis fund you've been trying to drain for the last hour doesn't contain $15 million. It contains a tracking script that has just sent your entire embezzlement history to the district attorney's office." Julian's face went from smug to ghostly white. He pulled out his phone. His hands began to shake. I turned to Elena. "And Elena, the divorce you want? You can have it. But you should know that the prenuptial agreement we signed has a Morality and Criminal Act clause. Since you signed those corporate expense authorizations for your private villas, you've technically committed felony fraud against the firm. Under the terms of the agreement, you forfeit all claims to alimony and marital assets. You aren't leaving with half. You're leaving with the dress you're wearing. And I might even sue you for the cost of the silk." The silence in the room was deafening. It was the sound of an empire collapsing. 6. The aftermath. Justice in the silence. The next 6 months were a whirlwind of depositions and court dates. Julian tried to flee to the Caymans, but he was arrested at the airport. He's currently serving a 7-year sentence for wire fraud and grand larceny. He found out the hard way that you can't build a future on a foundation of theft. Elena's fall was more poetic. Without my bank account to shield her, her friends vanished overnight. The galleries were seized to pay back the company's creditors. She tried to sue me, claiming I had tricked her into signing the documents. The judge looked at her and asked, "Are you saying you didn't read the documents you used to steal $3 million? She had no answer. She now lives in a small, cramped apartment, working as a retail clerk at a boutique she used to frequent. Every time she sells a dress to a woman like she used to be, she remembers the night she thought she was the smartest person in the room. A new architecture. As for me, I didn't retire. I moved to a small town on the coast. I opened a boutique design firm with Clara as my business manager. We don't build skyscrapers anymore. We build homes for people who actually care about the lives lived inside them. I learned that the most important structure you will ever design isn't made of steel or glass. It's made of the boundaries you set and the people you allow inside them. I am 65 now, and for the first time in my life, I am not an architect for others. I am the architect of my own peace. Living well isn't just the best revenge. It's the only revenge that leaves you with something worth keeping. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you loved, remember, the foundation might be cracked, but as long as you are standing, you can always rebuild. Better, stronger, and with much better locks on the doors. 7. The courtroom. The dissection of a lie. In a building, if the foundation is flawed, the cracks don't show immediately. They wait for the pressure. In that courtroom, the pressure was finally applied. Julian looked like a ghost of the man I once mentored. His expensive Italian suit hung off him like a shroud. Elena, on the other hand, was still trying to play the victim, wearing a modest black dress and dabbing her eyes with a lace handkerchief. The prosecution's opening. My lawyer, Marcus, stood up. He didn't use flowery language. He used blueprints. "Your Honor," Marcus began, This isn't just a case of corporate embezzlement. It's a case of orchestrated life theft. We will prove that Mr. Vane and Ms. Stone didn't just want a company. They wanted to erase the man who built it while he was too weak to fight back. The testimony of Julian Vane. Julian took the stand first. He tried to claim that the Solis Fund was my idea, that I was the one trying to hide money from the IRS and he was just following orders. Mr. Vane, Marcus asked, leaning against the wooden railing. If this was Mr. Stone's fund, why is it that the digital handshake used to access it every Tuesday at 2 a.m. came from an IP address registered to your private penthouse? And why, Marcus paused for effect, did you attempt to transfer $4 million into a shell company in Panama exactly 6 minutes after Mr. Stone was admitted to the ICU with a suspected heart attack? Julian stammered. I was protecting the company's liquidity. Arthur was incapacitated. Protecting liquidity by sending it to a tax haven where only you had the signature rights? Marcus countered. That's not architecture, Mr. Vane. That's demolition. The Elena cross-examination. Then came Elena. She tried to play the abandoned wife card. She testified that she only signed the documents because I had confused her with my failing memory. Ms. Stone, Marcus said, his voice soft but lethal. You claim you were confused. Yet, we have a recorded conversation, legally obtained through the company's security system in the boardroom, where you told Mr. Vane, and I quote, make sure the conservatorship papers are ready before he regains full consciousness. I want the Florida house sold by Friday. The courtroom went silent. Elena's face turned a shade of red I had never seen. That was out of context, she hissed. Is this out of context too? Marcus held up a folder. A receipt for a 3-carat diamond ring purchased using the firm's Employee Wellness Fund, signed by you, while your husband was undergoing a triple bypass? 8. The turning point. The cost of disloyalty. Watching them turn on each other was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. When Julian realized he was going to prison, he didn't stay silent. He took a plea deal. He handed over 3 years of text messages between him and Elena. Messages where they joked about my expiration date. Messages where they laughed about how they would spend my money once I was tucked away in a nursing home. The judge's verdict was a masterpiece of judicial iron. He didn't just sentence them, he stripped them. It is rare, the judge noted, to see such a profound lack of human empathy in a civil case. Mr. Vane, you are sentenced to 84 months in federal prison. Ms. Stone, while your criminal liability is secondary to the fraud, your civil liability is total. Every asset you acquired through these fraudulent authorizations is hereby returned to the estate of Arthur Stone. You are ordered to vacate the marital residence within 48 hours. 9. The true reconstruction. I walked out of that courtroom and into a different world. People often ask me, Arthur, don't you feel empty? You lost your wife and your partner. And my answer is always the same, I didn't lose them. I lost the illusion of them. I spent the next year traveling. Not to luxury resorts, but to the places I had always wanted to see but was too busy building to visit. I went to the ruins of Rome and the gardens of Kyoto. I studied how things that were built thousands of years ago still stood. The secret wasn't the stone. It was the intent. The legacy project. I didn't just keep the money. I used the recovered millions to start the foundation for ethical business. We provide legal aid to elderly founders who are being pushed out by unscrupulous boards or predatory family members. I became the mentor I wish I had had when I was in that hospital bed. Clara and I still work together. She's the daughter I never had, and the sister Elena never deserved. We recently finished a project, a community center for underprivileged kids. When I saw the first group of children walk through those doors, I realized that for 40 years, I had been building for ego. Now, I was finally building for soul. X. Final reflections. The architect's word. If you are in a dark place right now, if someone you love is handing you a suitcase and telling you that you are finished, don't believe them. They are only looking at your walls. They have no idea what your foundation is made of. Elena still writes to me sometimes from her studio apartment. She asks for mercy. I don't respond. Not out of hate, but because there is nothing left to say. The house of stone has been cleared of its rot. The lesson: integrity is your armor. If I hadn't kept my own accounts clean, they would have found a way to ruin me. Silence is a weapon. Let them talk. Let them brag. The louder they are, the less they hear you coming. Forgiveness is for you, not them. I forgave them so I could stop carrying their weight. But forgiveness doesn't mean giving them a seat back at my table. Thank you for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, if you've ever had to rebuild from the ground up, let me know in the comments. Your story isn't over just because one chapter was stolen. You are the author. You are the architect. Keep building.